Welcome back, everybody. We're here still at the r4alliance.org National Conference here in Florida. I am Bob Calvert, the host of TalkingWithHeroes.com, and as you know, you probably watched many of the videos already. We're talking with members, board members, and we're here with the chairman of the board, William Potter. Everybody calls him Potter. So why don't you start out, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about your service.
Well, Bob, typical mid-60s, I got drafted. And after I got Uncle Sam's notice, I said, you know, if I'm going to do this, I might as well make the best out of it as I possibly can. So I got an appointment to go to Officers Candidate School at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, be trained a combat engineer. And we started out with a class of 255 and graduated 55, and I was one of them, and I was very happy to do that. Then from there, I went off to Aberdeen Proving Grounds and got some ordnance training. And then from there, I got one of the greatest assignments that any second lieutenant could ever have. I had an admin job at a procurement site at the U.S. Army Aviation's activity at the Hughes Tool Company in Culver City, California. And I had an apartment on the beach in Hermosa Beach, and I was living like a king for about 9 months until I got orders to go to Vietnam, and then my life changed.
Yeah.
In Vietnam, I ended up in the 29th or 39th Transportation Battalion up in I Corps, which is in the Hue area, and our mission was to keep those 101st Airborne fire bases supplied with anything that they needed. So we were running trucks all over northern I Corps. And then the battalion commander liked me so much that he says, you know, Potter, he says, I want you to come work for me, be my headquarters company commander, even though it was a captain's spot. I'm only a first lieutenant. He says, and I want you to be my adjutant. And I said, but sir, I have no idea about anything about personnel. He says, you will by the time I get finished with you. So boom, I did it. And you know, when I rotated out of there, the Vietnamization of the war was in full bloom. Richard Nixon was the president, and things were winding down. So, you know, from my reserve officer's position, I had no further reserve obligation, either active reserve or inactive reserve. So it was a good 3 years. Back then I didn't find any fulfillment, but now I do, because in my OCS class and with the advent of the internet, we were able to reconnect with each other, and I found that there were numerous of my classmates who went off in the engineering field that were associated or were in direct contact with Agent Orange. All kinds of strange cancers were starting to happen. And we lost. I lost two buddies in theater, and then 5 of them had some issues with cancer afterwards. At first, the DOD denied that there was any connection with it.
3 years.
Sure, and then science proved that to be not true, and then later on, the VA, they were inundated with the stuff, and the cat was out of the bag. It was just too much for them to handle, so they didn't manage it very well. So when today's veterans started to appear with this brand new term TBI, PTS, I saw some of the same symptoms start to appear as far as the way the DOD and the VA were looking at this, that, well, there's no connection. Well, obviously that didn't turn out to be true either, but now everybody's kind of focusing in on it. But again, the VA in its reorganization today is having a very difficult time dealing with all of this, and it's going to be really up to the private sector to lend them a hand, and be partners in collaborating to see if we can find different ways other than opiates to help treat some of these afflictions.
So you were with R4 Alliance at what, very beginning, 20 months ago, is it?
Yeah, we got this thing cranked up, and you know, because we had 3 conferences or workshops over a period of 18 months, and because I guess during these conferences or these workshops, I was the oldest and the slowest veteran in the room, they made me chairman.
Wisdom.
Well, I guess so. Maybe, what's the difference between wisdom and knowledge? Knowledge is one thing. Wisdom is putting knowledge to work. So,
Exactly.
so maybe that's what it was. I've been there, done that, and I was really slow. So, and these young guys just ran circles around me. The next thing I know, okay, Mr. Chairman, here's your seat. So here we go.
Talk about the 4 R's.
4 R's. Self-explanatory. 1. The 61 members of the R4 Alliance today, by themselves, could not conduct a research project. Collaboratively, we can. It can be meaningful. And once the results are peer-reviewed and published, then it becomes gospel that recreational therapy is efficacious for the treatment of TBI, PTS, and MST. And we're about halfway through that process right now. We anticipate in another 9 months we're going to have some peer-reviewed results. The second R is recreation, because that's what we do. Mm-hmm. Through this recreation, we can take these kids that have been struggling to find their new normal. We can create some marvelous building blocks where they can create a new life for themselves. And through that, they're going to rehabilitate, which is the third R. And then from that rehabilitation, with their new normal, they can reintegrate in society, because that's where they belong, as a fulfilled member of society.
Okay.
That's what we're doing.
Absolutely. And last year's conference, Jim Dolan had picked me up and brought me there. And this conference is amazing, the difference. There's so many more organizations, so many more people. What do you think about what's happening here?
Well, one of our primary goals was to build a pretty big critical mass, mm-hmm. what I call it, and that critical mass is starting to take form. What's going to be interesting now is that this critical mass is starting to move. Yeah. And when critical mass starts to move, then it takes a little more management. So it's going to be up to us and the board to figure out how to allocate our resources to where they belong to keep this ball rolling.
Yeah. As I was listening today, the term came in my mind about the entire veteran community, the families, the military and their families. Help is on the way.
Help is on the way.
Yeah.
Help is absolutely on the way. And as we get more mature, obviously we're picking up a lot more knowledge. We're growing our network both in the private sector and with the VA and the DoD. And hopefully someday we're going to be able to collaborate to a point where where we're going to be able to get some funding out of the government to do what the government should be doing.
You have some really pretty big companies on board too now. I don't know
we do.
How much you want to
we
talk
do.
About
Yeah. We are very thankful that Northern Trust Bank in Chicago, they were our first big corporate support. They came on board early, and then as a result of that, in a personal relationship I have with some of the hierarchy at the Schultz Family Foundation and at Starbucks, they're on board, and they want to see us to continue in this growth pattern, and in our ability to collaborate with all these marvelous organizations around the country.
Great. So why don't you give the website again?
Well, it's www.r4alliance.net.
.org.
And you're right, .org.
That's okay.
Try that again, www.r4alliance.org. And that'll find more information about the organization than anybody will ever want to see. And I might give another shout out. Well, while you're there on that homepage, is go take a look at the Patriots Parade. It's a pretty interesting awareness and development initiative that will give today's veteran and those folks on active duty when they become veterans a way to tell their story.
Absolutely.
So.
Well, thank you very much. And before we go, would you like to give a shout out to our men and women who are still serving around the world?
You bet. You guys and gals, this is the first time in America's history that we've had an all-volunteer military serving multiple tours. We appreciate it. We know that you have tremendous sacrifices, both to yourself and your family, and we wish you the best. And when you come back and see us at the R4 Alliance, because we're here to help.
Great. Thank you very much for your service and continuing to serve. It's an honor to work with you.
Bob, I can't tell you how much fun it is to get to know you over the last several months, and we look forward to a lot more.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, folks, well, we just heard another episode from the r4alliance.org National Conference, this time from the chairman of the board of R4 Alliance. And we'll be back with more episodes, more members.